How are we doing today, folks? I want to talk to you about Neon City, the space Las Vegas of Starfield, honestly. And, in my opinion, the true face of the FreeStar Collective. Where the FreeStar Collective likes to wear the mask of Aquila City and hold its virtues and moralities as its foundation. What really keeps the FreeStar Collective afloat, no pun intended, is the Pleasure City of Neon. Because they generate so much money here. Most of the corporations from the Freestar Collective are in this area. They are in this small little fishing barge. And that's because of, obviously, one big thing Aurora, baby. And all the other different criminal activities you can probably do and get away with way easier than you can in other settlements of the Freestar Collective and the United Colonies. Because make no mistake, this is a Freestar Collective uh, city or settlement, but it almost is like it's like a third faction in a sense. I often treat it as its own governing body, as you can see that they have their own security system, and which is like their own private militia. The Freestar Collective has a you know office here, or not Freestar Collective, the Freestar Rangers has a little station here, but they are not really supposed to meddle or interfere with any of the official business dealings of the corporate elites, because that's kind of what upholds the structure of the Freestar Collective. It is ran on that oligarchy, technocratic, Silicon Valley tech bro ultra rampant capitalism that just is very unfair for most people and leaves uh, very few at the top very wealthy while everyone else is just struggling like crabs in a bucket to get any little scraps that they can find, as you can see on Neon. It is where New Atlantis, they kind of hide their wealth disparity in the well. Freestar Collective has, you know, it's out here in display. That's what Neon is pretty much the underbelly of the Freestar Collective. All the ugly bits and parts that are fairly unsavory to the rest of the faction, they all reside in Neon. And make no mistake, United Colonies likes to hide behind the fact that this is not a part of their uh, settlement or faction system, but they definitely enjoy it all, or its benefits all the same. They do business here and get their kicks on the drugs here just as much as they uh, want to, and they can complain all they want and act Puritan, but everyone in the settled systems treats this place as an escape from the rest of the colonies, because it's kind of like how Vegas is. There's kind of anything goes kind of vibe, but the biggest thing that you can tell right when you're here is the wealth disparity. It is on front display here because there's all the I mean even the shops. Being a shopkeeper, I mean, you talk to most of them, they are barely, paying their rent, let alone the different, fees they have to pay to the security guards to make sure that they stop crime from happening, or the gang violence that happens, and they have to pay, different gangs, the disciples or the strikers or whoever, to not vandalize their property. There's just a lot of crime that goes on here. And yeah, sure, some of the petty crimes get taken care of, but a lot of it just gets taken care of the good old fashioned way. And all the corporations just do whatever they want. So they really step on the little guy. And it is very reminiscent, and I feel obviously supposed to, invoke that inner city feeling where you're, you're stuck in this concrete jungle. You don't make enough money to get out. That you don't have enough money to get out to another city to go get another job to do something else. Like you're stuck in this. system that wants to keep you at the bottom because you don't have the right credentials, you weren't born into the right area, you're born in the wrong side of town, and so you kind of fall into this perpetual spiral of either getting sucked into the hustle culture and selling your soul to the corporate corporation world, or you end up getting involved in gang violence and just trying to survive and make ends meet for your family that are stuck on this, metal monstrosity in the middle of the ocean. It's, pretty unfair. And if the Freestar Collective wanted to, do anything actually about it, you know, they would, because they have their version of the well over in Aquila City, the stretch. But it's more just, poverty in, a small town, a rural area. But here, there are some pretty heinous crimes that happen, and a lot of innocent people get taken out. And the Freestar Rangers kind of wash their hands of it because, again, they don't want to meddle with the, you know, foundation of their settlement because this place generates way more money than Aquila City and probably Hope Tech even do. Hope Tech adds a lot. It's kind of like their little like freighter trucker, uh, you know, like a semi truck kind of contribution to the settled systems. But in terms of like what is really generating wealth, like this is like the Silicon Valley, uh, like industrial tech center for the Freestar Collective, which is why it even can, be on par with the United Colonies because Aquila City is just, a frontier settlement that really relies on farming and mining, a lot of mining, just very hard labor jobs that, generate a decent amount of wealth, but nothing like what you can generate here with, the illicit uh, drug trade because Aurora can only be bought and sold, legally, quote unquote, in the Astro Lounge or by Xenofresh specifically. And there's also, where there's a market for somewhere, there's also a black market. And that is purposeful because there's a lot of, mafia and cartel vibes here at Neon because a lot of it gets smuggled off world and sold on the streets of Aquila City and New Atlantis and all the other little settlements throughout the settled systems. And that is something that Neon and the people, operating within it directly benefit from, while also the elites are benefiting from, selling it legally, having their little choke point in here in Neon. And so it's, like a two-way street, but they are pulling in a lot of money by, uh, just concentrating that little illicit drug trade, but also, the tech industry with Ryusian Industries and the other so the one that Walter Stroud owns, uh, Stroud Eklund or whatever. They that's also like a high end corporation. And there's a lot of different corporations here, obviously, but it's just the fact that there's business here. The wealth disparity is almost a sense of pride and a badge to some of the elites and the people who have clawed their way up to the top. It's sad, but that's kind of how Neon runs is that, the people on the bottom trying to do whatever they can to get, on a higher rung of the ladder in whatever corporation they're chasing, or even just the gang world that they're chasing. They might have resigned from the, you know, Bayou Plaza type and have gone down to Ebside, and it still has not very panned out well because they're trying to just claw their way up through the gang world, and it's just a vicious cycle that either way, if you're part of the elites or you're part of like the lower end here in Ebside, you are just getting eaten up and chewed out. Neon is almost like a mirror to the settled systems. What the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective won't openly admit, and what they aren't really ready to admit to themselves about how they there is a viable place for something like neon. Neon has a place in the settled systems because, for as much of a bad rap that neon gets, it really is a mirror to the UC and the FreeStar Collective. Because as much as they want to disparage this place, it still has a viable place among the settled systems. Because whether you like it or not, United Colonies and FreeStar Collective have given it a market because that is human nature. The greed, the addiction, the hunger for money, and the scarcity mindset that is all wrapped into this techno futuristic city are things that the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective like to shy away from and act like they don't partake in and they have risen above. But they are all well and alive here on Neon. And it's kind of like a little eddy that has formed where all the bad eggs of society who quite aren't ready to become pirates and take on the pirate life, but don't want to live in Aquila City or want to live in the uptight rules of the United Colonies can come here and live a more free and, shall I say, immoral life. But, that's just based on your perspective. But Neon definitely is the dark side of the settled systems. As much as Neon City gives off that Pleasure City, Las Vegas vibe, it really does represent the inner city struggle of people who are just stuck in poverty and cannot get out in many big cities across the world in real life. And that's just more apparent than anything when you come down and see that Ebside is almost the real city. Ebside is the real neon, where Bayou Plaza is just where all the tourism and the you know rampant capitalism and the elites like to hang out and sell to all the tourists. The scarcity mindset is alive and well, and is honestly what really helps keep the whole rat race running here in Neon. Because without the chokehold point for the Aurora cells, and the only way to get Chasm Bass in the entire settled systems, it creates this like kind of like the uh, diamond theory. Is that what it's called? Maybe, but it's the fact that diamonds actually aren't scarce at all, but it's only a few companies who control the diamonds. That's exactly how Aurora and Chasm Bass are treated, and that is a very big profit making system here. But also, that's like in the whole settled systems, but just within the city, that is how everything is ran from top to bottom, and keeping the housing limited, keeping the real estate limited, and the job opportunities are cutthroat, meaning that at any moment, if you don't hold your end of the deal or do what your corporate master wants you to, there's someone right in line ready to take your spot, hungry to take your spot. So you're hungry and desperate to not lose it and fight for the guy above you to just get higher. Because if you become stagnant, you get chopped off here. And that is just the way that, you know, the scarcity mentality works, because there's not enough to go around. So you got to make sure you get yours, and sucks for the other guy. And a lot of people get taken advantage of in Neon City. It is Probably the roughest place to grow up in the settled systems. And with a chokehold on real estate, they can charge whatever they want and raise the price on whoever they want. So whenever there is a corporate squeeze, they just take it from the ones below. And they don't care who falls into the ocean. And actually, speaking of that, I always have wondered why there isn't a shanty town of floating little ships and barges and just anything that someone could get to float, you know, surrounding and waiting around this giant barge. But actually, because that would be like the natural sense of how that would happen. Poor people would just like linger at the very bottom because they could just float on this old you know foam flotation thing. Uh, that would ruin the fishing if they actually had a bunch of like like a little shanty town down below, or people just living on the water. That would mess with the industry, and you can't have anyone messing with the water. It's like Willy Wonka's chocolate. They got to make sure that's pristine down there because they don't want to have to travel, you know, hundreds, even 50, 30 miles outside of Neon to, pay to have barges go out and harvest chasm bass. They want them right here underneath the barges and have a nice environment to be able to harvest, their money, their aurora. So everyone is kept right here on this uh, giant dock, this huge barge out in the middle of the ocean. And that really does just create like nowhere to go. This is all you have. And there's only really room for sleep crates. And if you can get something else above that, then you're doing pretty good. But if you want to live in this city, that's what you're going to have to deal with. And some people think it's worth it because they like that city vibe, that hustle culture, and Silicon Valley style, on the edge of technology and innovation lifestyle that Neon does bring. Because if you're looking for like corporations and business and like big city life where you can kind of anything goes, that this is a place for it. In my honest opinion, the Freestar Collective's capital is Neon, but it would never be able to stand morally on a lot of the things it says if it actually admitted to that. So, because of, birthright and how history all panned out, Aquila City has just kept the capital status, even though it clearly has less of a population and less of a income. In my opinion, Neon City is the true capital of the Freestar Collective. But because of all the immoral and downright evil things that go on over here, you can't justifiably have a whole society based upon that. So, by birthright, Aquila City becomes the face and continues to be the face of the Freestar Collective because that is the majority of what people in the Freestar Collective believe in. But where the money and the economy really gets generated in this faction is Neon. The most income is from Neon that actually can be distributed to technology and like industrial innovation, because besides that maybe Hope Tech is the only one who's actually doing any innovation for the Freestar Collective as far as like creating a huge like ship manufacturing line. But mining and farming is all Freestar Collective has. It is a collective because they are just a handful of small little colonies and settlements. Neon feels like its own different faction or its almost own standing faction because it kind of is. Aquila City is just a relic and an representation of settling free space and frontier planets. But the heart of the Freestar Collective is in Neon. The inner city kid trying to get out, trying to make his way up a corporate ladder. and not afraid to whoever they step on, because they've been stepped on, and that's why they are in survival mode. It's sad, honestly, and it does not paint Freestar in a very positive light, even though they are my favorite faction. But it is something that you definitely have to deal with. Just like when you see the well for the first time in New Atlantis, and you kind of, that whole facade of the beautiful utopia up top kind of gets pulled away. That's how it feels when you understand Neon is actually the true capital, and it is the, you know, real heart and soul of it's the heart of the FreeStar Collective, and the soul is Aquila City. How about we'll go with that? But this is my little breakdown of just, you know, why I think Neon City is a mirror to New Atlantis and the FreeStar Collective and just the subtle systems in general, because it is what they like to sweep under the rug and act like they are better than, but still in the shadows participate and appreciate, because it is human nature. You can't push away your dark side, you can't push away the shadow. You have to embrace it. And it's kind of a anything goes kind of city. That's the best and worst part about Neon. So thank you for listening to this ramble. I hope it was good and decent to listen to. Uh, I look forward to talking about more settlements and more Starfield locations and topics in the future. Thank you so much, folks. Have a great day.